Welcome to the Warning Track Power Hour. I am Dr. Andrew Scaff. He is Dr. Michael Werman, Esquire. On today's show, we'll get to the College Football National Championship game and the AFC and NFC wildcard games. But we'll start today's show with how we got to the playoff teams and the Chiefs season finale. Mike, Chiefs won a narrow game with the Chargers, mostly a bunch of field goals and a defensive score. Were you satisfied with how the Chiefs backups played against the Chargers backups in the final week of the season?
Yeah, it was an interesting game. In, I'd say more for the reasons outside the game than in the game itself. Thinking about how the teams are the players are being rested for next week. Thinking about Chiefs' chances and who they were going to play, since it was already preordained that they were going to be the 3 seed. So that was kind of interesting. The game itself was, other than the defensive touchdown, was pretty ho hum.
Yeah.
No, it was 4 field goals for the Chargers, 2 field goals for the Chiefs were the only offensive scores. So, but I was impressed though that the backups played well. I thought I was particularly impressed that the defense did so well.
Especially that with like Snead sitting on the bench and getting some
Snead,
rest the last week.
yeah. There was no like McDuffie may played a little bit. Chris Jones played quite a bit trying to get that sack, but the rest of the defense, it seemed like it was mostly backups. Linebackers were all, it seemed like they were all backups. I don't think Willie Gay played at all really,
Mm.
or Bolton. In the offense, I thought did a pretty good job, even though the offensive line got a little banged up while they were playing. They had to have
And
Joe Tooney come in and play a couple different positions
yeah.
to keep that intact. Um, so yeah, it was a game that I found that I was impressed by the way the Chiefs, they won it. I guess there was a last second drive really that Blaine Gabbert led, but the offense didn't look very good.
Yeah.
So it's just a, I don't know. So it doesn't. But I don't know if it bodes well for the playoffs. But maybe having Mahomes there makes everything very different. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a. What did you think of the game?
Well, I think it's great in general for getting ready for the playoffs when you know all of these additional players that don't normally get a lot of playing time got some playing time in a game the week before the playoffs. So, you're not as worried about the team's depth going into the playoffs. So if there is an injury, say like early in a game, like in the wild card round, you're not as concerned about the backup being like such a big steep drop off from the talent level of what's they're accustomed to, at least anyway. So I mean I liked being able to be in that position as a fan to know that the Chiefs actually have like depth and
Yeah,
it's going to be
they're
like actually on the field the week before the playoffs and not just like, oh, I remember this from watching the preseason games like a year ago,
mhm.
that they have guys that can play, but they never play, but they could play if they had to, but now they're forced into a situation that's very crazy for being a playoff scenario. But now they're like very recently active, and that's I think a good thing at least anyway.
Yeah, it helps them both. I think it helps them kind of get game action pretty close to, if they have to step in. And it also kind of, I guess, gives fans some confidence that the team's not just going to fall apart if it's backups.
If like one guy gets injured or right.
Mahomes aside, I think it doesn't, I guess you don't want to see Chris Jones go out or Kelsey go out, but everybody else, it seems like, maybe some of the, maybe I don't, you don't want to see anybody go out, but nobody,
Yeah.
everybody is, you know I think nobody's irreplaceable, but I think it's, Mahomes. I think it's the really big names that you because they're really big names for a reason, and
Well, of course, yeah.
it's not like there are, you know great backups behind those big names.
Yeah.
So
I mean, usually the defense may be more of like a system than it is,
yeah,
one great player with everyone,
I
falling in
think
line behind that player. So if
I
one
yeah.
key player goes out, it doesn't mean that the system falls apart.
No, they can still keep things together, but I think the with if Jones goes out, the defensive line, its pass rush really goes out. Not just because Jones is a good pass rusher, but because he gets double teamed a lot and he frees up, Karlaftis or Menahue or or Dana, those other guys to get in and possibly get sacks. And I think against Tua, that's the most important thing is kind of rattling him because if he has a little bit of time to throw and nice, they have good quick plays that Mike McDaniel runs, and it seems like there are lots of easy throws for Tua in most games. But if he's harassed a little bit and has to get off his timing, that's going to be a lot different. Also, the cold weather I think will maybe play difference. It doesn't seem to affect Tyreek Hill very much. He plays really well in the cold, but some
Yeah.
of those other Miami players might not be as used to it.
I guess historically they've not been very good in these types of games,
No.
in the cold. So I mean that's definitely going to be a storyline developed to watch for, at least as the game develops. And they've not played well against top tier teams this season in general. They've really crumpled in just about every game against a team that has a strong winning record anyway. I
And
guess.
they did it. You could see in the last game of the season, they really should have beaten Buffalo because Buffalo did not play very well. They had a lot of turnovers,
Yeah.
and they didn't score very many points either. But Miami could score even fewer points. And the reason Buffalo won basically was because of a punt return touchdown that gave them some momentum and allowed them to come back. It was not, but had the Dolphins won, they would be the number 2 seed, and Buffalo would be the 7, and Buffalo would be playing at Miami. So Miami would be in the warm weather.
Yeah.
The Chiefs would be getting Pittsburgh instead. And so maybe a more winnable game. I think it cost the Dolphins probably chance. I'd say the Dolphins game against the Bills is more at home would have been more winnable than against the Chiefs on the road. And I think the Chiefs so like it cost it might maybe even the Chiefs game against the Steelers, because I don't know if that would be more winnable or less winnable than Miami right now because it's in the cold weather. Pittsburgh is good in the cold, probably
Yeah.
keeping it together. So
And maybe the other key factor for their game coming up will be that TJ Watt apparently is
he's
gonna be
out.
out,
Yeah, grade
with an MCL injury.
grade 2, which I guess is not severe. I think it's the opposite of murder. Isn't grade 1 is most no grade 3 is most severe,
Yeah, I think it's middle.
and
So it's
first
middle severe.
but first degree murder is more severe than third
Right.
degree murder.
Right.
Although if you've given someone in the third degree, that is more intense than a regular line of questioning, I suppose.
So that's like, yeah.
Third degree burn.
Murders are more in the DEF CON numbering
Yes, it
scheme.
counts down.
And
Yeah. Or the NCAA tournament seeding. It's more ordinal numbers. It should be first. It goes first, second, third that way, and first
Right.
is highest. Yeah.
Medical things seem to be the other way though, right? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like a first degree burn or a first degree strain is the least
Yeah. But
or
third is it's a little strange because you can see like there would be no maximum level of like no maximum level if third degree is the highest, because why couldn't there be a fourth degree or a fifth degree? It seems like they could go as high as they
as you can count.
like. At first degree, there's no more room. You can't really say there's a 0th degree like the laws of thermodynamics or whatever. But it's
Yeah.
yeah. So it's first degree. The idea is like it is the highest that it could be. You can't get any
Right.
more.
Worst case scenario or
They could call it
the
the
most. Yeah.
yeah. They could go from maybe they could have a best to worst rather than first through third. Like best case, medium case, worst case, something like that.
No,
If it is a case,
that makes more sense.
or least bad to worst.
So we're fixing the medical industry
Yeah,
through this episode too, as a side effect. We didn't know we were going to be talking about
as a
this.
side effect.
That's just what happens.
Yes.
Sometimes we fix other things that we weren't, planning on fixing.
We've fixed many things here on the One Track Power Hour. But if only people would listen to us, we have
Right.
fixed it. We in some cases, I think on some of our player predictions, we've been pretty right. This is our Mac Jones prediction. I think our
Right.
our Jordan Love prediction has not come terribly
Yeah.
true, at least given the results this year.
They've been by no means dominant though, and he just seems capable, I think is what we would use it as a descriptor for Jordan Love season.
Yeah.
Not the disaster that we were sort of expecting. No.
Yeah. But we also, I guess, this also relates to our Matt LaFleur dislike, since he led a not so good team to the playoffs again this year.
Well, I mean, he's just waiting for whatever decision he's going to make at some point in the playoff game that may cost him the season, because that's usually what happened.
It is usually what happens. Yeah.
Yeah, because they were like they would play well enough to get into the playoffs, and then well enough to be like maybe expected to win in a scenario, and then LaFleur will make some decision that will guarantee their loss.
Yes.
I'm still expecting that. If that doesn't happen, I will be shocked.
Well, we'll talk about our predictions for the wild card in a little bit. I guess maybe we talk about the Chiefs and the Chargers. I had a bet on the Chiefs and Chargers. Maybe we can segue this into our betting scenarios, which could not have turned out better for you or worse for me. But the first of these problems.
So we had very specific strategies, I think, that we both used in making our picks. And yeah, one of them maybe didn't turn out so well. One of the strategies apparently didn't work so well.
Yeah, my over/under locks were not good. Your spread locks turned out to be impenetrable
this time.
Yes, I won't make a spread impenetrable joke, but
was that intentional or did that just happen?
It kind of just happened, but then I maybe it was subconscious the whole time, but no, but anyway, I picked over unders and I picked one over, and the one over that I picked was under. I picked the Chiefs Chargers to be over 35 points because I thought there'd be some semblance of offense. There were only field goals made and only a defensive touchdown, so there weren't many points. But if there had been, half of those field goals had been touchdowns, that would have maybe pushed it over. But I was still 12. There were only 25 points scored, so it would have been needed to be a, two more touchdowns to do it. But
4 more field goals. That's what that would have been.
They needed more field goals.
That would have been far more likely than 2 touchdowns in the game that we got.
So the Chiefs had won 19-18. That would have been ideal.
That would have been fine.
So they were over was 35. The total was 13-12, so it was 25. So I was 10 points under when I bet the over. How about your first bet, Dr. Scaff?
So my first pick, I guess by the order of the games that were played anyway, I had Houston -1.5 at Indy. Was the Saturday night game. Really close game. And Houston ended up winning by 4, 23-19. Yeah, covering that 1.5 point spread to give me my first victory of the week. And yes, my strategy was trying to bet on teams that like really needed to win to secure their playoff spot, so they would actually be using their top talent in the game. That was my sort of strategy that I went about this
Hmm.
week. It seemed to have maybe worked better than the over/under strategy.
Yeah, my problem was that I didn't go with Pittsburgh uh this week. They've been
Yeah,
my
and that's been a regular thing that you've been doing and didn't go with it this time.
no, they've been my constant winner. So they were 3-point favorites. I would have bet on if I had bet on them, I would have won the one game, which would be a little better. But we'll talk about my other beats. One was again more legitimate. One was turns out to be a horribly bad one. We'll discuss. But
Where
I
you got
also
screwed, essentially.
yeah
Only
basically
better.
by
Yeah.
now I have
By now, someone that you're going to have a grudge
a
against.
grudge against Cowboys coach Mike McCarthy. Should I just talk about that one, or should I go on to?
Go for
Let's.
it.
You think I should? Okay, so
Whichever one you want to do. Just yeah.
let's say that for last because
Yeah.
it's
So you
uh
can rant about it
yeah, so I can
at
work
length.
get my blood to a particularly hot sort of boiling level that I need it to be.
Yeah.
Um, but Cleveland Cincinnati, I thought would also basically I thought Cleveland Cincinnati would be what the Chiefs Chargers game was. I thought, well, there aren't any quarterbacks for either team. They aren't going to score many points, so under 37 and a half, I like that. That wasn't what happened. The Bengals scored a ton of points, and the Browns kind of played the game that I thought they would play without was it Jeff Driscoll? Was he the starter?
I think Driscoll was the starter.
That's
Yeah.
the fifth starting quarterback that the Browns have
I think so.
played this year. And that's a little unusual. I don't know why DTR wasn't starting or um but maybe he's injured. I'm not sure. But
I don't know.
I don't think Driscoll offers any hope for the future or anything. So I don't understand
Maybe
that.
they just felt like they owed him something. I
Maybe.
don't know.
But yeah, that game was 31-14, so 45 total points. So it was, you know, there were too many touchdowns. If some of those touchdowns had been field goals, like the Chiefs game, maybe
Yeah.
we would have stayed under. But yeah, so I was wrong on the intra Ohio showdown. How about your second uh lock of the week?
Second pick I had was Tampa Bay was favored by 4.5 points at the NFL's worst, Carolina Panthers. Carolina wasn't really playing for anything, so it didn't seem like that would be like a spite-driven game to try to, pull someone's chances at the playoffs. They're locked in at the last place in the league, but don't have the draft pick that they would get because it's already traded to the Bears. They did not play basically at all. They scored no points, and Tampa managed 3 field goals in the game. Uh, Not a great game by any means, but covered the spread on the
9 points. Yeah.
9-0 victory.
Well, yeah, congrats to those Tampa Bay Buccaneers for winning the NFC South. They'll get to host a playoff game against the once mighty, but now very suspect Philadelphia Eagles. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But
Yeah.
I want to get to my bet that my lock of the week that should have been locked, but somehow there was a safe cracker working for the Dallas Cowboys that decided this wouldn't happen. So Dallas Washington game was supposed to be 45 and a half points was the over under number that I ended up picking. I think it went up to 46 in some places. But either way, I picked under 45 and a half because I thought, well, I wasn't sure. I thought either maybe Dallas would lay another egg on the road, and I didn't think Washington would score a lot of points. So I thought, okay, it's going to be low scoring. And it was low scoring for Washington, but it was not low scoring for Dallas. But So Dallas had a 35-10 lead through much of the fourth quarter, and then with 1 minute left, basically 1:14 left in the game, the Cowboys, rather than punting it away or just kneeling down and letting the clock run out and just giving it to Washington to end the game, they decided to kick a meaningless field goal to go up 38-10 from 50 yards away. It wasn't even a close field goal, like, with like, okay, we're just gonna kick this extra point. No, we're gonna kick this long field goal for no reason. Also, I think our kicker, is he still perfect on the year? Why don't we kick a
You can put that on the
difficult field
line.
goal for him so he can maybe not be perfect on the year? Yeah, but we'll kick this field goal for no reason, only to cover
Other
it,
than
other than maybe to go with the over rather than the over under. And so they won 38-10. So that field goal cost me a victory. That was maybe one of the worst defeats of the season for sure. The one of the baddest of beats, as they say.
yeah, totally unnecessary one. That's what, yeah.
Yeah, it was a little bit like, I think the one helped me was the field goal that the Rams used to cover the spread against the 49ers. That helped me. So maybe this was the universe turning against me and having a meaningless field goal, not to tip the over instead of keeping it under.
So Brandon Aubrey did miss 2 field goals in the game, so he did lose his perfect streak
Oh, he did lose it. Okay.
already in the game. Apparently, I didn't
So
realize that. So
were they
maybe they just wanted to get him, a positive way to
or they wanted
end
him
the
to miss 3 in a row
season.
and kind of resemble the Cowboys kicker from last year's playoffs, who missed, how many extra points did he miss?
Oh,
Around
right.
6 or something like that.
That was, yeah, a
It was
meltdown essentially.
Yeah. Was that Maher? Brett Maher. Was it?
That sounds right.
Yeah. Um, yeah. Yeah. So I don't. Maybe Mike McCarthy is trying to. Um, yeah, Brett Maher was the kicker last year. So
Well, I think the most likely scenario is that Mike McCarthy heard your pick and was like, I'll show him.
yes.
That's most likely what happened. Is that, you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure he is an avid viewer of or listener of the One Trick Power Hour, and he's come to take an intense disliking to me in particular. I guess that makes
Yes.
sense. If
That guy.
if you're a viewer or a listener, I don't know if it's my if he's a viewer, that's my looks that anger him, or if it's my annoying voice from a listener's perspective that angers him most, or maybe it's just my takes that are.
Maybe one too many negative Dallas takes during the season. Must be.
I guess I didn't think I was that negative on Dallas. I thought Dallas had a big play defense that was maybe not as good fundamentally sometimes, and if they didn't get a lot of if they didn't have a lot of defensive, like, big plays, they didn't usually win. They didn't win a lot. So
Yeah.
they need like those, like, big, turnover plays, rather than like the Chiefs defense. This is one of the things that people saw me as a problem with the Chiefs defense, was they didn't create a lot of turnovers, but turnover luck is more or less random.
Seemingly random, but it hasn't been random for the Chiefs. They haven't like randomly gotten turnovers this season.
Well, they you think it even out over the course of a longer
Typically.
time period. But yeah, but the Chiefs, I guess they got a defensive touchdown last game,
No.
and that was somewhat random, maybe. And
I think they still ended up negative for
turnover.
turnovers on the day though, didn't they? Did they
Uh,
have two and give up one?
did they have two? I think they only had one, but maybe they had two. Um,
Maybe it was just one.
Gabbett threw the interception over Hardman's head. And was there a fumble or
It was
something?
one each, yeah. So it was even. Yeah.
Yeah, I know the Chiefs are negative on the turnover differential this year, which I think is actually a good sign, because it doesn't to win. You don't have to always have fewer turnovers than the other teams. So sometimes this is something that happened with Buffalo too. I think they were when they lost, even though they beat Miami, even though they had more turnovers on the road than Miami does. And I think if you can do that, even if you play poorly and win, I think that's better than needing it.
Yeah.
Win. So I'm not. That's why
But
I think that
but
might be a
generally
weakness
over the
Dallas
course of
has.
the season, the teams that have the winning records and make the playoffs generally have positive turnover margins.
But do they? But that I think that's also maybe random because the NFL playoffs are extremely random. It seems like what teams make it versus don't. There are a few teams that are always going to make it or usually make it. You have the Chiefs. The
Yeah.
Bills almost
But
didn't.
the Chiefs had usually had the pot like a very, strong turnover margin. And this season has just been a little different for
Back in
them.
the Schottenheimer era, they did, but I don't know if they
Yeah.
really do always now. I think it's
Well,
been
even in those seasons, like when the Chiefs were giving up like yardage by the bunch, like they still seem to manage to, end a random drive with a big turnover. They may give up 75 yards, but they'll get the, interception in the end zone or, a sack fumble in the red zone somehow after they gave up a ton of yardage.
yeah.
So that was like how they managed to survive in those seasons where the defense wasn't so strong at, preventing yards, was they still managed to force turnovers.
Yeah, so the Chiefs are minus 11 on the year. Is that right?
I
In
think so. Yeah.
turnovers? Yeah, that is higher. Yeah, that's really high, and they still made the playoffs. The
But
teams,
that's probably the worst amongst the playoff teams, isn't it? Isn't
I
it?
feel, yeah, Philadelphia is minus 10. Cleveland's actually minus 9.
Yeah.
So a couple
11 is
playoff
still
teams.
more.
Yeah. Yeah, but look, the teams that are the highest. So Baltimore plus 12, which maybe explains also maybe why their record is so gaudy. Their turnover, you can't always um, prevent or get turnovers. But the New York Giants were plus 12 as well somehow,
Yeah.
and they were terrible this year. The Saints were plus 11. They didn't make the playoffs. Pittsburgh and Cincinnati were plus 11, plus 10. Dallas plus 10. So there were a lot of teams that were really high.
That did not make the playoffs though.
Most of the teams that were really high did make the playoffs.
Right. But there are a few
Every
that didn't make
so every team, so of the plus 8 and above teams, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 plus 8 and above. All but the Giants and Saints made the playoffs. So the Ravens, Ravens, the Steelers, Bengals, Cowboys, Texans, 49ers, Buccaneers.
Yeah.
Even the Bills, who turned the ball over a lot, they were plus 2.
Well, Cincinnati didn't make the playoffs.
No. 6 out of 9 they made. I forgot Cincinnati. Yeah, they didn't make the playoffs either.
So 4 of the 9 did not make.
I think 3 of the 9. Giants, Saints, Bengals.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Three of the 9 did not.
Yeah. So that's a good correlation.
But like of the like bottom,
Of the ones that were
the 4
minus,
worst did not make the playoffs. But then the 5th and 6th worst did.
yeah, of the ones that were minus 6 or worse, only the 3 out of the
Cleveland,
3 out of the 8 made it. 5 out of 8 did not. So
yeah.
it's not maybe as much of a correlation as I thought there might be.
I
But
think it typically is more of a correlation than that. The Chiefs did have a negative turnover differential last year too, but it was only -3.
yeah, only minus 3 last year, and they won the Super Bowl. I think the turnover differential, yeah, it hasn't been. It was plus 4 2021.
Yeah,
You're probably the same football database that I'm at.
I'm just on ESPN.
Plus 6 in 2020.
It goes up every year.
Plus
They're
8 in 2019.
really,
Yeah, it's gone
they're really
down.
falling.
It's gone down.
2017 they were +15, +16 in 2016.
Oh wow.
Then it goes the other way. So it's
Patriots were
basically in
plus.
the Andy Reid era, it's the turnover margin has gone down year over year.
Yeah.
Next year's going to be rough if the trend continues.
Yeah. Well, I think it matters less if you have Mahomes. And so the Chiefs have been more successful when they are not leading the league in the turnover. Or, if they're just kind of, it seems like they're just kind of middle of the pack. They've been doing better.
Yeah.
Yeah, Andy Reid's teams were 2015 is plus 14. I didn't remember this turnover stat for them. This is positively Schottenheimer-esque.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, let's talk about your third lock of the week that we haven't gone through yet.
Yes. The
Somehow,
final lock of the year
your
of
lock
the
of
regular season. I had in the Sunday afternoon games, Detroit -3 versus Minnesota. Another one of those games where Minnesota wasn't really playing for anything. Detroit had an outside shot at the 2 seed. They needed a couple of teams to lose, but they had to win, and they were one of the earlier games. So I thought they were going to be going for it. They did go for it and ended up winning 30-20. I think they ended up with some relatively bad injury though for their star tight end Sam Laporta
Florida
went
got hurt.
out.
Yeah.
So it may have cost them trying to go for it, but they did win and covered the 3-point spread by a full touchdown. So that got me my third pick and all three correct this week.
Yeah.
So finish our regular season
Sealed your victory.
with a strong finish for myself. It's winning the last 6 games even. So going 6-0 to finish the year, to finish +4 for the entire season anyway. So
Congratulations, Dr. Skip.
25 losses on the year, plus $400. Mike, you ended at 25, 28, and 1, minus $300. So your last week was the deciding factor in your season anyway.
I still would have lost had we each gotten 3-0. I still would have been minus 100 from you. So
right,
but still, yeah, we did somewhat similarly on our big board bets where we each lost a little bit of money, but I lost a little bit more, and you finished ahead of me there by several $1,000s on the year. I was
like
several
$200 on the week, but yeah, almost not too far from 10K on the year, I guess, right?
Yeah,
Difference in the outcomes.
and you had a clean sweep because you also at the beginning of the season predicted more teams over under wins records than I did. Although we both were dismal.
Terrible. Yes.
I was 10 and 22. I only picked 10 out of 22 correct. You picked only 12 out of
two better.
10 out of 32. I picked 10 out of 32 correct. You picked 12 out of 32 correct.
Yeah.
Isn't a whole lot better, but it's
what I found was amusing though is that I picked the entire AFC East correct and then only got one other AFC team right on the entire AFC.
That was 2 more AFC teams than I got right. I was 3 and 13 in the AFC. I messed that. I did terribly. So somehow I got.
Well, so a great number of the teams ended up like within like one game of their expected. So the sports books did a seemingly excellent job at setting these lines, which is pretty amazing for not knowing what's going to happen. And I think we tried to sort of factor in like what teams were likely to have injuries with quarterbacks that had injury histories, and that didn't really play out the way that we expected at all. I think that's what really cost us on our picks for the season. Yeah, not so good. We did not do so well.
Not so well.
Season-long bets are one of those things that I don't think I would actually really do. That's why we just talk about these things and not actually, follow through with our selections at an actual sports book.
Yeah. It's like making a long-term risky investment, which you would most investments you if they're risky, they're going to be short-term because you don't want to suffer something very risky for that long. You want to
Yeah.
either finished with or not. And
Although if we made a like a fund based on my season long NFL picks, you would have gotten a decent return on the year. Though if you invested your money with me to bet,
oh, I would have, yeah.
then you would have gotten a 37% return on your money, Mike. That's not so bad over the course of the NFL season.
Yes, if only you had bet your life savings, Dr. Scaff, you would be sitting pretty right now. Instead, you bet
Yeah,
meaningless
that's better than the S&P during the
scaff
pandemic.
bucks, and uh, those aren't valid tender anywhere. I don't believe, at least
No,
not until Proposition 14 passes. Funded entirely by the Scaff family.
that's what happens.
Yeah.
Right. Tell us more about Proposition 14, Mike.
It's something that involves certain families to produce their own money and spend it at local businesses. But yeah, mainly,
Is that a real thing?
no, I don't think so. But
I thought maybe you actually had heard something about something like this, and no.
no, it was just an elaborate joke that I hadn't really thought through all the way.
Yes.
But anyway, the scaff.
Sometimes those work out though. Like the first proverbial bank, I think is still they're still working on that one, setting the framework out for that.
Proverbial bank. Yes. That's where the scaff bucks are stored at the proverbial bank.
First proverbial.
Yeah. So do we want to move on?
Were there any other games from week 18, the regular season finale, that really stood out to you that made, like some impact on the playoffs? Were you
Well, we mentioned the Miami Buffalo game
Yeah.
already. I think the New Orleans Atlanta game could have been had a funny play at the end of it. Do you remember? It was Jameis Winston, the backup, was in for New Orleans. It was 41-17. So speaking of meaningless scores to run up to at the end to run up the score, instead the Saints actually pretended to kneel it and then decided to run in for a touchdown at the 1 yard line of the Falcons, which really angered then coach Arthur Smith, and maybe for good reason. But
Yeah.
what did you think of that touchdown there for the Saints late to
It's
win
definitely
28-17?
cheap, at least. But it is kind of funny that the last time you'll really see Arthur Smith on an NFL field was that right? Him complaining to his counterpart, who apparently had nothing to do with the decision. That was like supposedly done on the field by the players,
Yeah,
that they audibled to get a touchdown for one particular player. I guess wasn't that what it was?
yeah. Jamal Williams, I think, hadn't had
I
a
think he
touchdown.
didn't have a score this season, and
Yeah, they wanted to get him one.
well, yeah, but I don't know. I don't know how much, that's really worth it to anybody, unless he had the bonus tied to it. I don't
Yeah,
know why
Chris Jones
that
style,
matters.
the $1.25 million sack that he got
Yeah,
to push him over 10.
right. And that was
So
pretty cool to see the team really celebrated that with
they
him
did.
too. That was good to see.
Yeah, we usually use like I was watching the Baltimore Pittsburgh game. I don't know if you were watching it when Jadeveon Clowney got his sack. He celebrated, but it was basically by himself. The uh, rest of the Ravens didn't really do much with it,
No.
I noticed. So maybe that's bodes well for the Chiefs and their camaraderie with and with one another and their esprit de corps and bonhomie, whatever other French terms we can introduce, talking about the Chiefs' togetherness and
Yeah.
their uh, like of one another. So maybe that bodes well, and maybe doesn't bode as well for the Ravens. And we're kind of reaching here uh, for, but
How about the way Philly ended their season against the Giants? More
yeah,
or less in free fall
yeah,
in
they
the
were worse.
end.
They've been worse than the Chiefs. The only team that was like struggling more, well, maybe the Jaguars were probably even maybe worse than Philly because they didn't have uh
And they fell out of the
they
playoffs
fell out
entirely.
of the playoffs entirely. They didn't have the breathing room that Philadelphia had in their first 11 games. So yeah, Philadelphia, I don't know what's going on there.
And then they took
Cincinnati's
injuries
kind
to key
of
players late also. I think because with
yeah,
Hurts ended up dislocating a finger on his throwing hand.
yeah, that's not
I
good for
think
your quarterback.
Devontae Smith, I think, ended up with a hip injury during the game
Yeah,
also. So it's I mean, not a great way to finish the season, especially like losing big to a non-playoff contender. That's not good. I mean, not the Chiefs like finished the season in fine form either, but they managed to win games. Oof.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. At least they managed to win a few. It was not nearly as bad as
Yeah.
what was going on in Philadelphia. Although Philadelphia had already clinched a playoff berth much earlier than the Chiefs did by virtue of having won one more game.
Hmm.
So they didn't have to worry about falling out. The Chiefs, technically, if they had lost to the Bengals and lost to the Chargers, if certain other games had gone differently, they could have um,
Fallen out as
fallen
well.
out of the playoffs. Yeah, but fortunately, that did not happen either. But should we move on to talk about another playoff in football, the college football
Let's do it.
playoff? So we had the Washington Huskies, the number 2 seed, play against the Michigan Wolverines in the college football playoff, and Michigan ended up winning uh, that game 34-13. Did you watch the game? Were you impressed by Michigan? Were you disappointed by Washington? What was your impression of the game as a whole?
I watched a lot of it, and I think really, I mean, they're the Michigan running back that Blake Corum seems to be really important to that team, and he was really the key factor, I think, in the game. His ability to find the end zone, especially after breaking a lot of tackles. That certainly helps your team win down the stretch.
Yeah, he's one of their um they had a lot of good running back play. Michigan did. They had um Donovan Edwards had 2 touchdowns as well. He had that were 2 big long ones early on. So they had a great running game. The game was really closer than it seemed, I think, at
Mm-hmm.
the end. Michigan pulled away at the end, but
Mm-hmm.
but
I think they got a turnover that led to like back-to-back touchdowns that really
mhm,
pushed the score up in their favor.
yeah,
Made it look like it was a lot worse than it was, I suppose.
yeah. But Washington didn't have their kind of trademark big offense uh, either. So
Yeah.
I that's a little so that's maybe why they lost. But yeah, I thought it was a decent game. It was nice not to see Georgia or Alabama or Clemson in the finals. It was to see a little different group. Um, so Michigan, John Harbaugh wins his first national championship for Michigan in almost 30
Jim
years.
Harbaugh, right? Yeah.
Jim Harbaugh. Did I say John?
Yeah.
I was thinking of Baltimore Ravens coach John
Yes.
Harbaugh. So Jim Harbaugh is the Wolverines coach, at least for now. It's possible he might leave to jump to the NFL. Um, we mentioned Alabama. Nick Saban is now stepped down as the Alabama head coach. Are you surprised at that?
I am surprised that he leaves in a season that he didn't win a title. it seems like that's like the natural way to for those like dynasty type coaches to go out is on top. So I'm a little surprised that he chose to resign in a season that they didn't win
Yeah,
championship.
well, you try to go out on top anyway. In some
Yeah.
ways, this is like Belichick. Talk about him, another guy who now is no longer a head coach, at least for the time being. He'd not go out on top at, but he didn't. So he also
It
didn't
wasn't on his
select.
terms
Was
though,
on.
so
Well, it was
yeah.
supposedly it was a mutual decision, so maybe it was on his terms.
Well, it was in the same week
Partly,
that he had talked about taking a lesser role, giving up the GM side of
yeah,
the job, and then is mutually that's
that's
not
true. But it's also
true.
also I don't know. Can you trust what Belichick says
No,
to
in
the public?
general, no.
So it's hard to say what really happened. Um, I guess we're more into coaching carousel now than college football. Um, but yeah, so Jim Harbaugh is perhaps been linked to some of the open jobs. I think there are 8 now. We had thought there weren't going to be that many jobs that would fall open, but the last 3 have all been a little bit surprising. I think
Hmm.
maybe the least surprising is actually the Belichick leaving, because I think that was somewhat expected by a lot of people, but it didn't happen like on the Monday after the season like it did with Arthur Smith got fired, or Ron Rivera got fired right after the season. But
Hmm.
then a few days later, within pretty short succession, we have Vrabel out as the coach in Tennessee. We had Nick Saban retire, and we had also um,
Pete
uh,
Carroll
Pete Carroll retiring in,
sort
or at
of
least
maybe being moved to a different role within the organization,
senior manager position or
but not
something.
but will no longer be the head
Head
coach.
coach, yeah, some like offensive assist, some sort of ad managerial assistant type of role, and then Belichick out. So like the last 3, I think were very surprising. Um, were uh were you which one was the most surprising to you of
Yeah, I think
You throw Nick Saban too, of the 4 of them, which was the most surprising?
I think the Belichick one had been kind of hinted at, where I think Bob Kraft had mentioned that he'd made a decision about Belichick. I think most people sort of assumed that that meant that Belichick was going to be moving on in some capacity. So it's maybe that wasn't maybe the most surprising. It's still a big deal though. It may be the biggest deal, but it's maybe not the most surprising.
Yeah,
I think the Saban resignations probably to me would be the most surprising. In the NFL, I'd probably say the Mike Vrabel firing is the most
yeah,
surprising.
because Carroll is old, so like he was the oldest coach. I think he's
Yeah.
70.
I think the same age as Saban, 72. I think they're both 72,
72.
I
Yeah.
believe.
So
But
even
had
old.
been there for 17 years, something like that, right? 14 years?
He'd
Something
been at the Seahawks for a
mid-teen.
while.
Yeah. But that's quite a while. And he'd won a Super Bowl. Probably should have
Yeah,
won a second Super Bowl if he would have handed off to Marshawn Lynch against the
against the
Patriots and
Patriots. Yeah,
Belichick. Uh,
that would maybe have kept Belichick from winning one more Super Bowl, and Tom Brady as well. So
yeah.
um, that was a close. Yeah, that would have been back-to-back winners. That would have been also the most recent back-to-back winner. The Chiefs are trying to become I think the first back-to-back winner since the Patriots in like 0304, I think,
Wasn't
something
like
like
that.
that. So 20 years basically there has not been a the Patriots also came close. I think they've won like every other year for a 3 or 5 year stretch as well. But the Chiefs have won 2 in 4 years, and they would have won 3 in 5 years. The biggest, uh, one of the best stretches in NFL history, if that comes to pass. But let's say we have 8 teams. Maybe I'll ask you this question. So right now there are jobs available in for the Chargers, the Raiders,
And
the
Carolina were the three
and
interim coaches.
Carolina. Those are the 3 in-season ones, and then
Yeah.
we have Washington and Atlanta were the ones that were kind of the typical firings after the season. And then we also have now New England, Seattle,
Tennessee.
And Tennessee. Of those 8 jobs, which is the best? Which is the best job, do you think?
So I've always thought that if you're looking at which is the best job, you want one of two things: either the best quarterback that the team already has, or the best draft pick that you can get the best player that isn't on a team, or maybe you can bring somebody in free agent wise. Uh, but man, it's pretty tough. None of those teams are really in that good a position, or are in such middling positions that it's not very easy to
Mm-hmm.
start over or make better what's already there. And so like the Seattle job, I think they're maybe one of the better teams because they're on the edge of the playoffs this year. But I don't know that you can say that the team wasn't winning because of the decisions Pete Carroll was making. I don't know that you
Yeah.
could find like extra wins out of his season to like fix the team that's existing. And they don't really have like, draft picks coming except for picks they got from the Russell Wilson trade from Denver.
Yeah.
So I don't know that there's much improvement to be made there. You're kind of like a caretaker for a team that already exists. I don't know that you really want to do that unless that's your, thing. It seems like I guess the Chargers job, because Herbert's maybe the best of the quarterbacks on the teams that are there.
I think that
Maybe that's the best spot, but they have such a weird,
it has some
history
of the
of
best weather. But you're also in maybe you're in a place where you're always going to play against Patrick Mahomes. However, I think there are 2 other really good jobs. I would say, in terms of maybe being able to win right away, even though they don't have a quarterback, is Atlanta, because they're in the AFC NFC South. They
yeah,
finished 7-10 3 years in a row. So Arthur Smith was 7-10 every year as a coach. He was remarkably consistent
yeah,
in his 3 years. But basically, they don't have a quarterback, but they have like Bijan Robinson and Kyle Pitts and Drake London, and they have good position players. They have a pretty good defense. So
yeah.
like, maybe you could even like say we don't need to draft somebody. We can bring in like Kirk Cousins or somebody like that.
But
And
they didn't do that the last 2 years, so you have to wonder if the GM is
yeah,
good
well,
enough
they didn't want to
to
go
make those kind of
after Lamar
decisions.
Jackson.
Yeah,
That would have been the pick to do. This would have been the time to do it. They could have gotten
yeah.
him probably. I think the Ravens ended up taking him, but I don't think they really wanted him that badly. Maybe I think maybe the Ravens lucked into a secretly great offense um around Lamar Jackson, but I don't know if that's what they meant to do. But anyway, as so I
Yeah.
mentioned Atlanta I think maybe not in terms of footballness, but in terms of being able to like be the head of like an important team is the Washington job, because
Mm.
you don't have Dan Snyder to worry about anymore.
Now that they've cleaned house at the top of the organization, it should be a place that you can sort of cultural wise start over, and you'd have a
Yeah,
big
I
factor
think
in it.
I think Washington was once also the most valuable franchise in the NFL.
Mm.
And now I don't think it is anymore. But so that could be a place to your stadium's not very, I guess they don't like the stadium in Washington. It's kind of maybe outdated and not in the right place, but
Right.
um it's still only like 20 years old. So I don't know what their problem really was with it, but
Yeah.
it seems like it wasn't maybe built to last, or didn't have the right renovations or something, or haven't been done, or whatever. But um
That's crazy.
it was who do you know the architect of Washington's football stadium? Was it HOK
It's
Sport?
one of four, I guess, right? Pretty much. It would have been in the HOK Sport era, but I don't know if it was them that did it.
Okay, so FedEx Field is what it's called, and its capacity, right, is only 58,000. Its uh capacity was once over 91,000, so now it's only 58. Is that because they cut off the upper deck? You can't sit in the upper deck anymore?
Oh, maybe.
It might be
Well,
a
and it's in a suburb too. It's not in like the proper.
yeah, Formula Jet can't. It is HOK Sport that built
Yeah.
it.
Was the architect, yeah.
Yeah, it was built. Okay, so it's opened September 14th, 1997. So 26 years ago
Yep.
in, in Landover, Maryland. But yeah, no. So that Washington job is interesting to me. I think
Yeah.
um, it's in a tough division, but it's also in the most kind of lucrative, one of the more lucrative markets. Also in the probably the maybe the most famous of the NFL divisions with that, because you have Dallas
Yeah.
and New York Giants and the
When it's in
Eagles.
the nation's capital, it's right.
Yeah,
It's yeah.
that's a big deal. Yeah, and so
Well, so now that Belichick has parted ways with New England, do you think other teams will maybe part ways with their coach in an effort to lure Belichick there? Do you think
yeah,
there'll be additional firings because of it? Is there a fallout firing, downhill avalanche type of thing because of this?
I wouldn't put it past a team to do that. I don't know if they'd. I still don't know if that would get them Belichick though. I don't know if Belichick would talk to teams that already have coaches. I guess we don't even still actually even know if Belichick's going to coach next year. Maybe he is retiring for good. Who knows?
I could see
But
him going into the booth for a year or something too, right? Like
yeah.
being a very strange analyst. He doesn't, really talk a whole lot. So it'd be funny to see him act
Well,
very
he
differently.
in certain circumstances he does talk a lot. Like he talks a lot about football history and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
he's maybe he good as I mean I'm sure he'd be fantastic if he wanted to be an analyst. But that's hard to say if he would ever want to do that.
Yeah.
But I think he had to wear suits and stuff. He's not the most sharply dressed of the NFL head coaches usually.
But that was like trolling the league though, wasn't it? I mean, he did that because the league made a mandate about a dress code having to wear, NFL emblazoned attire, and so he's like, "Give me the worst thing you have, and then I'm gonna tear it apart and then wear it as like a rag, basically," which is what he did for a while. I always thought that was really funny because it was more of like trolling the league than that was his like personal style, was my understanding anyway.
Yes. Well, there's a New York Times article about that came out today actually about the Bill Belichick hoodie era. Oh, I need to my subscribe like I'm trying to look it up right now, but my subscriber thing is not working. But
Uh,
anyway, it would have been fantastic for me to talk
is it an
about.
ESPN article or?
It's a New York Times article.
Oh,
There is an ESPN article that's explained why he wore certain outfits at specific times. I think, but he's worn a hooded sweatshirt of some one type or another um, since his early days in New England. But yeah, he does cut. Maybe he just likes to cut off the sleeves. I think. I don't know if it is even.
I think it's just it was trolling the league because the league made some policy change that said that you have to wear NFL branded attire, and so like because I think he wanted, maybe even would have worn like a suit on the sideline for a game, and then they said that you can't do that, you have to do this, so he wore the worst thing he could find as a replacement, and so it was like it turned into like kind of a joke.
Oh, it could be. I found it on my phone. The New York Times article.
Yeah.
It says more than anyone except perhaps Mark Zuckerberg, Boston's famous football coach, has become synonymous with the hoodie. Do you think of so who do you think Zuckerberg is more famous for his hoodie than
I
Belichick
don't,
is?
I don't think of Zuckerberg at all, so I don't really care.
Yeah, I would say no. I guess you think of maybe that's what that's what in the social network movie Jesse Eisenberg, I guess he was always wearing the hoodie.
No.
But yeah, I don't. So it says the origin story of Mr. Belichick and the sweatshirt is part of his mystique. He first appeared in the gray hoodie in 2003. Before that, he often wore windbreakers on the field. And you're
Yeah.
right. As the tail, okay, as it's similar. As the tail goes, he adopted the hoodies after the NFL made a deal with Reebok that included coaches, meaning that they were forbidden to wear suits or anything else. So it was you had to wear Reebok
Well,
clothing.
specifically Reebok.
I think it had to be specifically Reebok, and then now it's Nike now. I think
Wow.
is the company, but
But he like tattered them up to make them look even worse, but he was still fulfilling his requirement by
I
the
think
league.
he liked. I think he also liked the idea of maybe wearing a suit
Yeah.
on the sideline, right? But he wanted to find the least fashionable item. He cites. He says. But no, and Mr. Said when asked about it somewhat recently, Belichick said he liked sweatshirts because they were comfortable. He could carry stuff in the pouch, and cutting off the sleeves because his arms were too short and the fabric was getting in his way. That's what he said. But
No. I think it maybe morphed into that over time, but I'm pretty sure it started as trolling the league,
yes,
fulfilling the contractual requirement that, that was mandated to him by the league, not, something that he chose, right? It wasn't like part of his contract that he had to wear.
no,
It
yeah,
was like somebody else signed a contract that was
it was part of the
forced
blanket
upon him, and then
ownership, yeah,
he will
agreement.
fulfill it, but he's going to do it in the way that is most amusing to himself. Makes the league look the worst, I think, at the same
So
time.
yeah, what was the question you asked? Was would any team fire somebody for Belichick?
To try to lure Belichick
I
there.
could see the Bears because I don't think Eberflus he's on pretty thin ice. I think.
It
I
seemed
also
like maybe the Bears said that they're planning on keeping Eberflus was the initial statement, but that can change on a
yeah,
whim. And this may be, something that could trigger something like that.
but I don't see the Bears job maybe as being particularly great for Belichick to want to come in
Yeah.
and win. That's why I think you think this. I think the San Diego, I mean not San Diego, the Los Angeles Chargers
Yeah.
or maybe the Falcons is probably the best for kind of winning immediately. Or unless Belichick and Nick Saban decide to team up together and go to Seattle and have like the all old guy coaches working together
Yeah.
up there. I don't see that happening real really either. But
It'd be the AFC West seems to be luring big name coaches in.
Vegas could also maybe be a place for Belichick because of Tom
Yeah.
Brady's status there. That would be the ultimate kind of evil move that Belichick could take,
Right.
being the new Raiders coach. And he could
But
also probably bring in
again,
Josh McDaniels to be the offensive coordinator for the Raiders.
well, and that may be part of the trigger for Belichick's exit was because the media had already started talking about McDaniels coming back to New England to be Belichick's offensive coordinator there. And then that maybe Kraft that says, I don't want to do that again. If they don't have Brady, then I don't want to, have those guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that may have like, further led to the decision. So
So
go
if
and
yeah,
move Belichick. I don't know.
so would you rather have Belichick, Vrabel, or Jim Harbaugh as your coach if you're an NFL team? So those three. That'll be our last question. Then we'll move on to the
Well, I
uh,
would say that
playoffs.
probably, I mean, Harbaugh would be on the biggest upswing of the three, with Vrabel not making the playoffs this year, Belichick having his worst season, New England this year, but Harbaugh not being in the NFL, but winning college national championship game. Uh, he would be like, on the furthest upswing, at least anyway, at their point in their respective careers, I suppose. But I guess maybe, and Harbaugh had success in the pros before, so
He was decent with the 49ers, leading them to a Super Bowl that he lost against his brother John Harbaugh.
Right.
That was the um, 2012, I think, Super Bowl.
Sounds right.
Colin Kaepernick versus Joe Flacco. One of those players is still in the league. We'll talk about him in a second.
Right.
But yeah, I don't of those who I take. I might, if I wanted. I don't know if I, for certain reasons you'd want Belichick because he is maybe the best coach in modern NFL history. I think also you might want Vrabel because he's kind of in the middle of his coaching career, and he's done really well with some teams that aren't that great. He finally wasn't able to kind of pace the Titans together to win a bunch of games the last couple of years, but that's, well, a lot of that was kind of injury.
In personnel too, that it's
They
not
don't
just
have the players. Yeah,
decision making. It's
yeah,
good wide receivers, but they never had the right quarterback for the wide receivers they had. They still had a lot of success with this team they had, but yeah,
yeah,
they could have been better with a better quarterback. Maybe they just drafted the quarterback of the future, and they won't find out if Vrabel is the guy to
yeah.
put those pieces together. Now, if they have them, perhaps it seems a little strange that he would be among the coach firings in the offseason here.
Would yeah. So yeah, I think, yeah. So then I think there's good things to say about Harbaugh too, but I then maybe there's this, you might wonder about the sign stealing and things like that. But I guess it doesn't matter as much in the pros,
Yeah.
but maybe you have that kind of shadiness possibly.
Straight to
But
the Raiders then, right? Is what
that's what the Raiders. Yeah, the
expect.
Raiders would be good. But I think Antonio Pierce did so well for the Raiders. It would be like for the Raiders to like have two interim coaches to do really well, and then neither one get the final job. And then if the next coach turns out to be not very good, maybe if it's Belichick, you can say, well, we have Bill Belichick. Sorry, Antonio Pierce, you were great, but you're still not Bill Belichick. That's probably the only one of those
But it's
guys.
going to end up being Gruden again, though, isn't it?
Gruden. Yeah, they thought we were thinking about Gruden going back.
I guess he had made a statement too that he has a lawsuit that is, I believe, coming up with some kind of court date soon. I don't know if it's just for motions or whatnot, uh, but it's renewed this stipulation that he had made that he is willing to drop the suit if he gets his job back.
Gets his job back.
So that may be something the league would prefer,
Yeah.
because who knows what else will come out that the league doesn't want released to the general public over the course of this trial, should it happen.
There's also where the Saints might be thinking of bringing John Gruden in for a role in their coaching staff, which doesn't make any sense. Like, what? I guess that would mean that why wouldn't he be your head coach? He'd be behind Dennis Allen. But it's also wasn't said he wasn't going to offensive coordinator either. It was going to be some sort of other position. So I guess because Derek Carr is on the team, he did pretty well with Derek Carr.
Yeah.
So that's why. But it seems like, yeah. But yeah, John Gruden's case, I think, is going on right now, or
as we speak,
yeah,
perhaps.
yeah. But as we speak, the playoffs are upon us as well. We have what they call Super Wildcard Weekend beginning on Saturday, lasting into Monday, where 12 of the league's 14 playoff teams are playing against one another, playing games. The only ones that are out are the number one seeds. In the AFC, it's Baltimore, and in the NFC, it's San Francisco.
14 of the 16 are playing.
Did I say that? 12. I said 12 of 14.
Yeah.
I think it's 12 of 14 because there are seven seeds in each conference.
Well, there's 7 games though, right?
I think there are 6 games.
No, there's 7. No, there are 6.
6 games.
6 games. Never mind. Yeah, it's 12, 14. You got it right.
Yeah,
I'm wrong. I'll shut up.
We're recording this very late, so maybe that's our. We're just we're a little bit tired here at the.
Yeah. No, that's right. You had it right.
Yeah, thank you. I finally one for my side over Dr. Scav. But yeah, we have 6 games coming up. Uh, do you want to go through those games in chronological order?
Let's do it.
Since they
Well,
each are
we'll end
played.
up making our picks at the same time. Is that what we want to
Yeah,
do?
let's make our picks and talk about the game a little bit, and that'll uh, bring us into next week. So we have the first game is the afternoon game on Saturday. That is the Cleveland Browns at the Houston Texans. Cleveland is a road favorite, favored by 2 points in that game. And the over-under is 44.5 points. So Dr. Skeff, any general comments on the game, and then maybe what you think your pick would be?
I think there are some like really great storylines around most of the games where there's some link between the two franchises that are facing off that you really are going to be watching during the games to see how the things play out. In this case, Houston and Cleveland had that big trade 2 years ago, with moving Deshaun Watson from Houston to Cleveland for a trove of draft picks, and Watson is not playing in the game as he's injured this season, and Houston will be bringing out their all of their young talent that they got in this trade, essentially
Mm-hmm.
playing against a team in the playoffs. That's a really great, way to look at, how these two franchises have developed anyway. So, like, I'm going to be pulling for Houston, I think, in the game, but I kind of
And,
think Cleveland's going to end up winning this one, and
and
Houston
yeah,
may be getting some experience in the playoffs that they will bring them back in future years to have a more successful run.
my
Maybe even
question would
a
be,
shot at it.
yeah, does Deshaun Watson's not playing, does that help both teams? Uh,
Yes.
He's not playing for Houston, so
Definitely.
Houston got a bunch of draft picks, and they don't have to deal with Deshaun Watson anymore. And now it turns out that Joe Flacco runs the Cleveland offense much better than Deshaun Watson ever did. So is his absence is it
Actually,
lifting up both teams?
yeah,
I think it might be.
I
Um,
think you're right. Yeah. Which is a really funny way to
but
think of it.
maybe Deshaun Watson's
Probably
laughing all
true.
the way to the bank because he has, all this money, no matter what, even though he's uh maybe not the most savory of characters, to say the least. And
Right.
so, but anyway, um yeah, I think it's interesting storylines. I kind of want Cleveland to win simply because I think that would line them up probably to play against Baltimore. And so you would, in the divisional round, so you would have both the old Cleveland Browns playing against the current Cleveland Browns, and you'd also have Flacco against the Ravens, and Lamar Jackson against Flacco, and
Yeah.
I think that would be the most. So in that game, I am predicting Cleveland uh, to win. So I think they'll cover the spread too. I don't think they'll just win by 1 point. So I might as well so I would say Cleveland -2, and
Yeah.
I'm going with the under 44.5. What say you, Dr. Scaff?
I'm also going Cleveland -2. And you said you're going under.
Yeah.
I think I'll take the over in that one then. But I will join you on the spread. I think I'll be rooting for Houston, but I expect Cleveland to win.
Mm,
That's kind of how I'll be approaching this game as a fan, I guess. So
yeah. Well, we want to move on to Saturday night with the Chiefs. The game exclusively on Peacock, which has caused maybe some consternation around the country. I have Peacock already. I'm out of the Kansas City market. You're in the Kansas City market, so you'll get it. But I had Peacock basically because I don't have cable and I wanted to watch Sunday Night Football. So so I'll watch the Cleveland Houston game also on Peacock, even though it's also available on NBC because I don't have regular TV service.
uh,
So I think the people that are complaining about being on Peacock are you know, kind of right, but also they're paying. you always have to make some sort of purchase to watch any sort of TV.
Yeah.
Because mostly people pay the cable company, or you also, maybe you don't pay for your over the air network, but I don't know how many people watch over the air TV, and you would have had to buy an
Exclusively.
HD antenna um,
Yeah.
to do that. But yeah, I don't know how many people actually have the HD antenna anymore.
I don't know. Yeah.
Might be interesting. I might get one because I don't where I live I can't really, the antenna doesn't really work very well, I don't think, but it might be something to I hadn't really thought about that for a while, but you always but like if it was, the ESPN has shown games all the time, and so having to pay for those, that's already pay-per-view really, that people have gone through. So whether it's Amazon or Comcast or NBC, uh, I Comcast, I guess, is the parent company, but it doesn't. It's still. I think if you're a Comcast cable subscriber, I think uh, it's free, or what it used to be. It's not. It's no
Mm.
longer. It's no longer free for me. I have Xfinity internet, but it's no longer
Yeah.
free. But anyway, back to the game itself. Let's talk about that rather than the broadcast of it. For the exclusively on Peacock game Saturday night at Arrowhead. Temperatures perhaps hit actual temperatures, not just wind chill, but temperatures themselves possibly below zero at some point during the game.
Possibly even at kickoff is what they're saying now.
Oh, really? Oh, that's
Possibly -1 at kickoff is what they. I mean, it's still days ahead of time, so it's
yeah.
from where we're recording this, at least anyway.
They'll yeah, that would be a sight to see. But the Chiefs are favored by 4.5 points, and the over under is also like the Cleveland Houston game, 44.5 points. Who do you like in this game, Dr. Scaff? Do you have any other comments about the Chiefs' chances against the Dolphins?
This is again the rematch of former Chief Tyreek Hill, now coming to Kansas City for the first time since he's left the Chiefs. So it'll be an interesting game, at least anyway. It's going to be extremely cold. Miami hasn't played well against good teams. He didn't score a lot of points against the Chiefs the first time they played when they were in. The game was in Frankfurt, which is technically a Kansas City home game, but not in Kansas City. I have a hard time betting against the Chiefs. I don't tend to do it anytime, so I'm going to take the Chiefs -4.5 and probably the over also in the game.
Okay.
That tends to be how I pick Chiefs games. It has not been terribly successful this season, but I'm going to stick with it because that's what the fan version of me says I should be doing, I think.
Okay, yeah. So I think if the Chiefs contain the Dolphins offense, which they might be able to do if they can get a consistent pass rush on Tua Tagovailoa, the Dolphins pass rush is basically going to be non-existent. I think they actually picked up former Chiefs star Justin Houston. They also have Melvin Ingram and Emmanuel Ogbah on that defensive line, so it's going to be like ex-Chiefs from the from seasons past that are going to be in place of Bradley Chubb and the other guy.
The other three pass rushers that are all injured, I guess.
Van Ginkel and
Ginkel's out too, I think. Yeah, so
Phillips is that the other guy?
I think that sounds right.
Yeah. So they're all out. So maybe, and the Chiefs have had a good pass rush lately. They're one of the top pass rushing teams in the league in terms of sack numbers. So looks like they were last year.
So pressures and knockdowns and all the
yeah, they aren't getting a lot of turnovers, but they're sacking quarterback quite a bit. So I like the Chiefs as well, -4.5. I think they can. Again, the Dolphins, they're not this goes without saying that Miami is not a cold weather city. The Dolphins are probably not as used to the cold weather as the Chiefs are, who've been able to practice in it the last week, and it might not be quite as cold now as it will be at game time, but it's still below freezing in Kansas City and has been for a while. So I like unless the Dolphins left and started practicing in Kansas City a few days ago, which I don't think they have. that the cold is going to maybe be an issue.
And
So
it'll affect the kicking game. It'll affect the passing game. I don't think there's supposed to be like rain or snow during the game, which is a positive thing for the Chiefs and the risk of all the drops that has happened in
yeah,
games that have been bad weather.
but the cold weather is not hard to. I guess you have gloves, and it's not going to be fun to catch the ball in this weather.
Yeah.
But
But it
again,
does seem to affect like the kicking game. Like the ball doesn't necessarily fly as well. So
yeah,
like, they may be going for 4th and 3s and 4th and 4s from between midfield and the 30-yard line. So we'll see, how that affects the game style too.
yeah, they aren't going to be kicking meaningless field goals at the end of the game to try
I
to
don't
trip the over under.
the Chiefs don't do that anyway, but
Yeah, an Andy Reid
you
coach team would never have done that.
Oh yeah, so were you taking the over under in this one? Did you
Oh, I'm doing the under. I'm
take the
doing
under?
Chiefs minus 4 to 5 in the under. I have a strategy for these over unders. I don't know if I'll ever.
Ooh, I see a trend developing
Yeah,
for both of us.
that trend is going to continue, Dr. Scaff.
Oh, even
So
in the next game?
yes, we have next game is Pittsburgh at Buffalo, Sunday afternoon, early afternoon. Buffalo is favored by 10, and the over under is a mere 36.5 points. What anything that you want to talk about Pittsburgh Buffalo? It's also supposed to be very cold. But it might be snowy and windy in Buffalo during the game. So not quite as frigid, but I think maybe with wind chill, it'll be close to zero in Buffalo.
And this is another game that's going to be affected possibly by a single player too, as TJ Watt is going to be out. And we talked about the Chiefs being more of a system defense. If one guy's out, it may not have as big of an effect on a team. I don't know if that's the case with Pittsburgh. I think in the last couple of seasons when we've seen Watt be out, it has really affected the Pittsburgh defense. I don't know that I don't think he's missed much of this season. So if this season is different, then we don't know. So maybe it has an effect, maybe it doesn't have an effect. But Buffalo's been really turnover prone during the season.
Yes.
I think some of that leads to an expectation for a low scoring game. I don't see Buffalo losing this one. I don't think that they'll be playing it close either, but Pittsburgh has been the most baffling team for me on the season. Whatever I think I should do, I should probably do the opposite of it. But I think I'm not. I'm going to take Buffalo minus 10, but I will steal the under this time. I think I expect a low scoring game.
Yeah, I think it'll be really low scoring because of the weather. I think the weather is going to be worse like if it's windy, that really affects over under. I think they're supposed to be like 25-mile-an-hour constant winds, or something like that. So and gusts up to like 50 miles an hour. So it's going to be very windy
Wow.
there, in Buffalo. So I'm going to go under 36.5 as well. And I'm also going to say Pittsburgh keeps it close simply because I don't think there's going to be a lot of scoring. And I think it's going to be something like 20-13, maybe Buffalo wins. So I think Pittsburgh, I still think Buffalo will win, but I think Pittsburgh keeps it within 10.
So you're not bold enough to take Pittsburgh on the money line also.
No, I think Mason Rudolph's magical mystery tour has come to an end, but you never know. I don't, but I think also if TJ Watt were playing, I wouldn't rule out their chances because he might get a couple of really big plays and turn. Highsmith is very good as well, but when they have both of them playing at a high level, that's their defense is going to be really, really good. And also, I think TJ Watt would be able to contain Josh Allen maybe better than as a defensive end, maybe than some other, maybe the backup end might, not have the containment savvy that Watt does. So, yeah. So I do think Pittsburgh though will keep it somewhat close. All right. So we'll move to the 3:30 Central, 4:30 Eastern afternoon game that will surely be on. I think it's going to be on the Fox network, I believe.
I assume.
Green Bay at Dallas, and
It is on Fox.
Dallas is favored by 7 points at home, and the over-under is a robust 50.5. What about Green Bay Dallas? Green Bay Dallas is a matchup of once and former or once and former and current and still teams that Mike McCarthy was the coach of. He was formerly the coach of the Green Bay Packers. Now he's the coach, of course, of the Dallas Cowboys. It's also a rematch of the old. Speaking of cold weather games, it's a matchup of the old Ice Bowl between Dallas and Green Bay. Although it's in Dallas and not in Green Bay, which would be probably even colder than Kansas City is on Saturday.
Yeah.
But
instead it'll be in the dome in Dallas.
In Dallas.
In a controlled temperature in an area that's probably not nearly as cold, yes.
Yeah, in the Jerry's world. Which team do you like in that game? And what do you think? What do you think? What's your general prediction of the game?
I mean, if McCarthy was willing to kick a field goal to hit the over in a meaningless season finale game, then he should be more than willing to run up the score against his former team, which I don't know if they've played each other. Have they since? Or I wonder if they have. I haven't. I guess I haven't looked.
I don't know if they have.
McCarthy
They didn't this year. I don't
yeah,
know if they have played each other. Yeah.
They probably don't play each other very often. I don't know that he's actually faced them. It seems like this is where he'd really want to, blow out Green Bay on the big stage in a wild card, a playoff game. I fully expect Dallas to cover the 7-point spread. But that over under gets tricky though. If they play like they've been doing with their, win games like 38-10 kind of thing, that would still be under in this game because the over under so high. I think maybe that's what I'll end up doing with that as all. Yeah, Green Bay -7, or yeah, not Green Bay. Dallas -7, under 50.5.
Okay,
But it'll be, I think, a big spread.
Interesting. I like the under as well in that game. I don't think. I think it's going to be more like the last two times that Dallas played good teams. The games were very close, and they would have been under this total when they played Miami. When they that was like 22-20 or something type of game, and there was a similar score. I think it was 2019. The score between Miami and Detroit. So I think those are close games against playoff caliber teams and games that I think Dallas that could have won both of those games, but they're both pretty close. So I think Dallas will win the game, but I think that Green Bay will keep it within a touchdown. So I like Green Bay +7 and the under.
Trend continues for your over-under picks, Mike.
Yes. Shall we move on to Detroit? Another potential cold weather place, but one that's but in Ford Field though it will be under the roof in the dome, cozy Ford Field that hasn't hosted a playoff game ever. I don't think in its existence.
No, I don't think so. Yeah.
Yeah, this is the first I think Detroit home playoff game in maybe in the century.
Well, they never win the division, so
yeah. So this is the Rams at the Lions. This is also the Matthew Stafford, Jared Goff Freaky Friday Bowl where they had switched switched positions. Or is this more of a Freaky Friday situation, or is it more of a
trading places maybe, or
what was yeah, I was thinking what was the movie with the
twins?
Yeah, that were separated at birth, and then it was Lindsay Lohan was in the remake, and it was
Parent Trap.
Parent Trap. It's a
Yeah.
Parent Trap thing where they're
I think you're gonna be like trading places from like the Eddie Murphy
oh yeah
80s movie.
yeah. No, this was I was thinking yeah
Where they like take a guy from the street and put him in a brokerage firm.
Freaky Friday was about it was what I was looking for. I guess because
Yeah,
they basically did swap with one another on
right.
purpose, I guess, in some ways. Um, I guess Freaking Friday wasn't exactly on purpose. It was a coincidence, but
Magical relic sort of thing that
yeah, yeah,
swaps their bodies. Yes.
yeah. Anyway, I can't believe I couldn't remember the Parent Trap. This is it's late,
It's even
but
later than it was when we were making mistakes earlier. I mean, when I
yes.
was making mistakes earlier.
Now we're both
Yeah.
we're losing it here rapidly. We have the Rams +3 and the over under. So Detroit favored by 3 points at home, and the over under is 51.5, slightly higher
Yeah.
than Green Bay Dallas 50.5. So of this game, any comments about this game? And then who do you like in the
If this was like maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, the Rams offense hadn't been very good at all, and I would easily take Detroit without even thinking about it. But the last couple of weeks, Detroit hasn't played all that well. Rams offense seems to be clicking pretty well. I think Detroit's probably, the team that's on the upside, and the Rams are maybe neutral to dipping, but they've finished the season really strong. I think they may be in the best momentum spot, at least between the two teams. I may actually be leaning towards the Rams +3 on the road. And I have a hard time going over to that 51.5, but yeah, I think I'll take the under in the game.
Well,
You?
I think I like the Rams in this game as well. I think partly because everybody thinks Detroit is this feel good story, and I don't know if that lasts in the playoffs. I think the Rams are a more seasoned playoff team. I think they have a better quarterback. I think they also have a better running game with Kyron Williams emerging, and they might have right now better wide receivers as well. So I think their offense, like you said, the Rams offense hadn't been that good, but they've woken up, I think, and become a
Yeah,
very strong offense. I think with Aaron Donald, their defense is still pretty good. And I think Detroit is maybe just happy to be there in some ways. And they remind me a little bit of maybe the Kansas City Schottenheimer teams where they were favored at home and had those big, crowds and then blew it in the playoffs. I don't know why I have that feeling, but I think I'm leaning Rams and I'm also leaning under. So I'm in full agreement with you on no. Watch this be a high scoring blowout by
53-40 Detroit victory, something like
yeah,
that.
something like that. Yeah, I like the Rams and the under as well. And
Final
then we have
game.
one more game Monday night, the last game of Super Wild Card weekend, and that pits the Philadelphia Eagles at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And the Philadelphia is favored. The fifth seed Philadelphia is favored over the fourth seed Tampa Bay by 3 points on the road, and the over/under is 43.5. What do you have to say about the Eagles and Buccaneers?
And this is the one that I don't really have like there's no clear like storyline amongst these teams, right? It's Baker Mayfield against I don't know how
Jalen Hurts. Well, we
he
have
ties into the to Hurts. I guess they're both Big 12 quarterbacks
yeah,
for at least one season anyway, because
they're
Hurts
both at
was the last,
Oklahoma.
yeah.
Yeah, for a little while.
Yeah, so I guess they have a tie that way, but they weren't there at the same time, so it's not
No, there is a
yeah.
tie that the Buccaneers were the last NFC team to defeat the Eagles in the playoffs. That was Tom Brady's Buccaneers defeated Jalen Hurts' Eagles the year before they went to the Super Bowl. So two
Yeah.
years ago, the Eagles lost to Tampa, I think at Tampa as well. I think, yeah. But I the biggest story is, can the Eagles stop from
Come out of their slide or
yes, stop their steep decline? Are they
yeah,
they've lost, I think, 5 out of their last six
six. Yeah.
games, and they're not looking so good, and they're traveling to Tampa Bay, which is, was not, I think they're 9-8 on the year, but Baker Mayfield had a pretty solid season, and Tampa is probably feeling pretty good. It's a game at home, and Philadelphia has been reeling, uh, but still the Eagles are favored by 3 points. Do you still like the Eagles in that game?
This is maybe the toughest one to pick, I think, just from the, quick glance at them anyway. I'm kind of leaning towards Tampa, especially with Hurts taking that, dislocated finger during the into the last game. I
And
don't
that's
know what
not good
to
for a quarterback on
expect
his throwing
then.
hand.
But I mean, is he going to be that sure-handed with running it then either? Because that's like always been his, ability to extend plays and ability to, get the ball downfield himself. Maybe he's not as sure with the ball security, even with, not having, if his hand isn't 100%. I don't know. I have a hard time, thinking that that's a great game plan to have a quarterback with a broken or dislocated finger, especially on the throwing hand. I think I'm kind of leaning towards Tampa Bay +3, but ooh, that under over. Maybe we'll go against what I'm thinking at least anyway, and take the over in this final game.
So 43.5 over, and you have Tampa +3. I also like Tampa Bay +3. And I'm going to take the under again. So I picked under for all 6 of these games. I decided to go straight under. My preseason straight overs worked really well, so maybe my postseason straight unders will work well
Yeah.
in this. So that's my hope anyway. And I think, yeah, again, I like you had said, the Hurts injury also plays a major part in to why maybe Tampa Bay can win.
Really complicates the, you know, trying to figure out what the strategy is from either side of this,
and if
especially on the
if
betting.
and you would think if Tampa wins, it's not going to be a shootout. Probably it'll
Why
be,
not?
but but I don't know. But I think maybe 20. I think that over under is kind of in the middle though, so it's not like it's super. Like it could be a 24-21 game, and the over will hit. I just don't think it'll be
I don't think anybody's getting
it'll
in the
be
30s. I
two
don't
teams
think,
in the
yeah.
30s. No.
But Tampa, I mean, Tampa's defense is okay. Philly's defense has not played very well recently.
No.
So and then, Philly's offensive line, I don't think it's been that great of late either. And, the whole team has really faltered down the stretch of the regular season, which is really surprising how they finished the year.
Yeah.
It seems like that would be harder to come out of that steep of a decline as the season has, come to an end. It's not like do they have that switch that they can just flip right back on and they're be in playoff mode? I don't know.
Yeah, it's not like it's. I think in some ways the Eagles. It's not like they just lost a couple of games, maybe where they could have gone either way. They did. They lost a couple of those, but they lost also a lot of big games by big margins. They lost badly to the 49ers. They lost fairly badly to the Cowboys as well, and so they were losing these games.
Well, then ending the year getting blown out by the Giants
And the Giants,
isn't great.
yeah,
That's not a
yeah,
great, way to
losing
finish
at,
the year.
at and losing at home to the Cardinals. No, even if the Cardinals were doing a little better at the end of the year, that was a surprising. Yeah, this was very surprising, and maybe they are just not as good as they were last year. And you could also maybe say that about the Chiefs, although the Chiefs games were much closer on the whole. But we are at least hoping. I think the Chiefs can flip a switch somewhat, and Philadelphians, I'm sure, hoping that can happen too for them. But yeah, I'm not sure that's going to be the case. So
Well, at least, as the Chiefs fans would probably, say is that, from the last game, at least going into the playoffs, it's basically a different team because they rested almost, their most key players, at least anyway. So,
Mhm.
you say they underperformed the last game of the season. That doesn't mean anything at all because most of their key players weren't even in the game. Where
Yeah, I was
Philly
thinking more down the stretch that
did
they
use all of their key players in the last game and played terribly against a team that isn't the
yeah.
Phillies. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. It's like the Chiefs maybe were like kind of rough down the stretch, but they weren't as rough down the stretch as the Eagles.
Yeah.
Where they also won their last game with their starters as well. So they won the last two games, and they have sort of a built-in bye. So maybe that's another reason we might like the Chiefs with since the um, uh, Dolphins had a Sunday night game and played all their top players, so they've had less rest than the Chiefs, who had I guess they had an afternoon game, so a few hours.
Yes. A
But
couple
they
hours.
also were able to rest some of their really key players.
Yeah.
And play and get kind of everybody into the game rather than just have your top players be the main guys. So but I'm looking forward to how the weekend shapes up, and I'm certainly looking forward to a Chiefs victory. I hope that happens. Do you have anything else before we wrap up today, Dr. Scaff?
I think, and also, waiting to just see what the next part of the coaching carousel ends up being too will be interesting for us to follow.
Yeah, and it's one of those things like, what do you try to get somebody early, or do you wait till the end of the playoffs and then see what uh, options you have? That's something that had
Yeah.
maybe plagued coaches candidates like Eric Bieniemy before, because he was always in the Super Bowl or in the AFC Championship game, and wasn't able to land a job because these teams were hiring early, and you know the Eagles last year had both of their coordinators hired away as head coaches. So maybe one of these teams in the playoffs this year will have something similar happen with multiple staff members leaving. But yeah, that remains to be seen. That'll be interesting. See where Belichick goes. See where Vrabel goes. See where what happens even with Nick Saban or Jim Harbaugh. Some of these college guys. So
You think there will be any hires before our next episode a week from now? Or do you think there will be more hirings than firings?
I think I think
At
there
the
will
pro
still be
level.
I think there will still be some firings to be had.
Yeah.
I don't know if it'll be at the top level, but it'll be assistants and things like that going. And I don't know if there'll be any hirings, but maybe if they're trying to race to get Belichick or something like that, he might get hired more quickly.
Yeah.
Or Vrabel, those like when Andy Reid went on the market and the Chiefs were kind of raced to get him.
Yeah.
I can't remember when was he hired. I don't know. There are I think there's a time period where you can make hires, and I don't know if you can do that exactly right now. I don't remember what the rules are.
Well, they usually don't let like the coordinators interview for other jobs until the season's over for
Yeah.
them. So if they're still in the playoffs, and they tend to not allow.
They do allow some interviews, I think, but you can't hire somebody until after he's done. So, but you also don't want to spend as much time preparing for an interview since you're preparing for the game that's coming up.
Right.
So we don't have any time to prepare for any interviews before this weekend. But we have prepared our bets and our predictions for the playoffs, and we hope you have done the same and your teams do well for you this weekend. And why don't we sign off, Dr. Scaff? So as always, I am Dr. Michael Werman, Esquire. He is Dr. Andrew Scaff, non-Esquire. We are the One and Track Power Hour. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel or our different podcast delivery vehicles. And as we said, we wish you good luck this weekend. Try to stay warm if you're going out to any of these games. And until we'll see you again next week. And until then, we'll bid you a good day.